Imagine building a dream from the ground up, pouring every ounce of your heart into a business you believe in, only to hear whispers that it's become a nightmare for the very people you swore to serve. What would you do if you suspected your own empire was hiding a dark secret? Welcome to the story of Jason Carter, a man who risked everything to uncover the truth about his own dealership. Will he find the integrity he built his name on, or will he uncover a web of deceit so deep it could destroy everything he's worked for? Stick around to witness a jaw-dropping reveal that will leave you questioning how far you'd go for justice. If this intrigues you, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life dramas, and tell us in the comments, have you ever been cheated by a business you trusted? Let's dive into this roller coaster of a story. It was a sweltering July afternoon in the small industrial town of Riverton, Ohio, where Carter's Wheels stood as a beacon of local pride. The dealership, with its sprawling lot of gleaming trucks and SUVs, was a testament to Jason Carter's grit and vision. 15 years ago, he'd started with nothing but a tiny garage and a promise to his late father, a man who'd been burned by shady car salesmen, to create a place where honesty wasn't just a slogan, but a way of life. Today, Carter's Wheels was one of the top dealerships in the state, moving hundreds of vehicles a month and employing over 50 locals. But beneath the polished surface, something felt off. Jason, now 48, sat in the driver's seat of a battered 2005 Honda Civic, a far cry from his usual sleek BMW. His face, usually clean-shaven and framed by a tailored suit, was rough with a 3-day stubble, hidden under a faded baseball cap. He wore a worn-out plaid shirt and scuffed work boots, a disguise meticulously planned to ensure none of his employees, especially the newer ones who'd never met him in person, would recognize him. Had been managing the dealership remotely for the past year while exploring expansion opportunities in neighboring states, leaving day-to-day operations to his trusted sales manager, Dan Hargrove. But recent customer reviews had started to gnaw at him. While sales numbers were soaring, online feedback painted a troubling picture. Glowing praise for selection and initial prices, contrasted by scathing complaints about hidden fees, pressure tactics, and broken promises. "I can't ignore this anymore," Jason muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel. He remembered his father's defeated look after being swindled on a car purchase decades ago, a memory that had fueled Jason's mission to build a dealership rooted in trust. The thought that his own business might be betraying that legacy made his chest tighten. So he decided to go undercover as Mike Tanner, a blue-collar worker looking for a reliable truck for his fictional construction gig. With a deep breath, he adjusted his cap, slouched his shoulders to mask his usual confident stride, and stepped out onto the lot, ready to see Carter's Wheels through the eyes of a customer. The summer sun beat down on the rows of polished trucks as Jason, now Mike Tanner, shuffled across the gravel lot of Carter's Wheels. He kept his head slightly lowered, playing the part of a nervous first-time buyer, while his sharp eyes scanned every detail: the polished chrome, the neatly aligned vehicles, and the bold banners proclaiming, "Honesty is our engine." It was a slogan he'd written himself, but today it felt like a hollow promise waiting to be tested. Before he could even reach the showroom doors, a young salesman with a megawatt smile and a name tag reading Ethan bounded over like an eager puppy. "Hey there, welcome to Carter's Wheels. I'm Ethan. What can I help you find today?" His enthusiasm was infectious, but Jason detected a rehearsed edge to it, a polished script delivered countless times. "Name's Mike," Jason replied, pitching his voice a little higher and rougher than usual. "Been saving up for a while now. Need something sturdy for my construction work. Trucks take a beating on job sites, you know." He gestured vaguely toward the lot, keeping his body language uncertain to gauge Ethan's approach. Ethan's eyes lit up, sensing an opportunity. "Oh man, you've come to the right place. We've got the toughest trucks in Ohio, perfect for heavy-duty work. What's your budget looking like?" His tone was friendly, but Jason noted how quickly he pivoted to Manea. classic sales tactic to anchor the conversation. Got about 32 grand saved up, Jason said, choosing a middle-range figure to see how the salesman would handle a realistic but not extravagant amount. He followed Ethan through the lot, noting how the young man steered him toward a black Dodge Ram 1500, a popular model priced just above his stated budget at $34,500. Ethan launched into a polished pitch about towing capacity, durability, and a special Carter's Care package that he claimed was included free of charge. Jason's ears perked up at that. The Care package and extended warranty and maintenance bundle wasn't supposed to be bundled automatically. It was an optional add-on costing $2,000. He'd explicitly designed it that way to give customers choice. Keeping his expression curious but clueless, he asked, "Care package? That sounds fancy. What's all in it?" Ethan hesitated for a split second, his smile faltering before recovering. "Oh, it's just our way of making sure you're covered. Roadside assistance, oil changes, the works. Standard on most of our deals." His vagueness set off alarm bells in Jason's mind. Standard? That wasn't policy. He made a mental note but nodded as if satisfied, asking to pop the hood and take a test drive to keep the interaction natural. During the test drive, Jason kept the conversation light, asking about mileage and wear while observing Ethan's body language. The salesman seemed increasingly nervous whenever Jason pressed for specifics on pricing or add-ons, glancing toward the showroom, where a sharply dressed man, Dan Hargrove, the sales manager, watched from behind the glass with a hawk-like intensity. There was something predatory in Dan's gaze, a silent signal to Ethan that made Jason's instincts scream caution. Back in the showroom, as they sat at Ethan's desk to discuss paperwork, Jason noticed the young salesman's hands trembling slightly while pulling up forms on the computer. "So, Mr. Tanner," Ethan started, his earlier confidence waning. "The base price on the Ram is $34,500, and with the Care package and some processing fees, we're looking at a total of..." He trailed off, eyes darting toward Dan's office. "Processing fees?" Jason leaned forward, keeping his tone casual but curious. "What kind of fees we talking about?" Before Ethan could answer, a commotion at the neighboring desk caught their attention. A raised voice, thick with frustration, cut through the hum of the showroom. Jason tilted his head just enough to observe without seeming nosy, his heart rate quickening. This could be the crack in the facade he'd come to find. At the desk next to Jason's, a middle-aged man in a faded delivery company uniform stood gripping a stack of papers so tightly they crumpled at the edges. His name tag read Robert Klein, and the exhaustion etched into his face. Dark circles under his eyes, a slight slump in his shoulders, spoke of long hours and unrelenting stress. A small photo slipped from his papers, fluttering to the floor, a picture of two young girls and a boy smiling around a birthday cake. Robert's voice cracked with emotion as he argued with another salesman. "This ain't right. Me and my wife, we calculated every penny. Saved for 3 years for this truck. You told me $30,000 out the door. Not $34,000. Jason, still playing Mike Tanner, pretended to focus on his own paperwork while listening intently. From the corner of his eye, he saw Dan Hargrove emerge from his office, his tailored suit and slicked-back hair, a stark contrast to Robert's worn-out appearance. Dan's face wore a mask of professional concern, but there was a coldness in his eyes that made Jason's stomach churn, a look he'd seen before in men who valued profit over people. "Mr. Klein," Dan began, his voice smooth and patronizing, "I understand your frustration, but these fees are clearly outlined in the fine print of your agreement." He slid a document across the desk, pointing to a dense paragraph in tiny font. "The market adjustment fee, the mandatory security bundle, and our premium financing plan, they're standard for all purchases over $25,000. Robert's face flushed with a mix of anger and despair. "But your guy, Tim, promised me the total was locked at 30 grand. We put down 6,000 every dime we had saved. I can't afford an extra 4,000. I need this truck for my delivery routes. Without it, I lose my job and my kids. His voice broke, and he looked down at the photo on the floor. Dan's smile didn't waver, but it never reached his eyes. I'm afraid Tim is no longer with us, Mr. Klein, and verbal agreements don't hold up against signed contracts. Perhaps you should read the terms more carefully. He tapped the paper with a manicured finger, his tone dripping with condescension. Jason noticed something damning. The document's date stamp was from that very morning, suggesting the fees had been tacked on after Robert's initial agreement. Please, Robert whispered, his voice barely audible. My oldest is starting high school this fall. I need this job to keep a roof over their heads. The truck I've got now breaks down every other week. I timed this purchase so carefully, his desperation hung in the air like a storm cloud. Dan adjusted his tie, unfazed. You've got two options, Mr. Klein. Pay the additional fees by end of week, or we terminate the sale. Of course, per the cancellation clause, you'd forfeit your $6,000. Deposit. The trap was brutal in its simplicity. Pay what you can't afford or lose everything you've already paid. Jason watched as hope drained from Robert's eyes, replaced by a hollow resignation. It was a look Jason knew too well. He'd seen it on his own father's face 30 years ago, when a dealership pulled a similar bait and switch, leaving their family in debt for years. Dan's smile turned sharp, almost predatory. Feel free to file a complaint with the owner if you'd like. Mr. Carter is a busy man, expanding across the Midwest. I'm sure your issue will reach his desk eventually. He lowered his voice, but Jason caught every word. And between us, who do you think they'll believe? A delivery driver who didn't read the fine print, or the manager of a multi-million-dollar operation? Jason's blood boiled, but he forced himself to maintain his disguise as Mike Tanner. Every instinct screamed to stand up, reveal himself, and stop this cruelty. But he knew acting impulsively could let Dan cover his tracks. If this was happening so brazenly in the middle of the showroom, how deep did the corruption run? How many other families had been crushed under these tactics? He needed evidence, hard, undeniable proof before making his move. Turning back to Ethan, Jason kept his voice steady. Those fees you mentioned, they gonna pop up on my paperwork too? I don't like surprises. Ethan swallowed hard, glancing nervously toward Dan's office, his earlier enthusiasm replaced by unease. Let's just go through the numbers, Mr. Tanner. I'm sure we can work something out. His evasiveness only confirmed Jason's suspicions. Something was rotten at Carter's wheels, and Dan Hargrove was at the center of it. With Robert Klein's devastating encounter seared into his mind, Jason knew he had to probe further without blowing his cover. Leaning toward Ethan, he kept his tone casual but pointed. Look, man, I couldn't help but overhear that other fella. Seems like a raw deal. I just want to make sure I'm not walking into the same mess. Can you break down every fee before I sign anything? Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed nervously, his eyes darting around the showroom before landing back on Jason. Lowering his voice to a near whisper, he admitted, Listen, Mr. Tanner, I shouldn't be saying this, but Mr. Hargrove has a system. We're told to quote low at first, get folks excited about the vehicle, then slip in the mandatory fees during the final paperwork. If we don't play along, we get stuck with the dead shifts early mornings or late Sundays when no one's buying. Can't make commission without customers, I know. Jason's heart sank, but he nodded encouragingly, discreetly activating the voice recorder on his phone tucked in his shirt pocket. So, if you don't follow his rules, you're out of luck. What happens to guys who push back? Ethan hesitated, then sighed. They don't last long. Like Tim, the guy who dealt with Mr. Klein. He tried to be upfront about costs, refused to play the game. Dan made an example out of him, fired him on some flimsy excuse. Now, we all know better. His words confirmed what Jason feared. This wasn't just one bad apple. It was a culture of deception orchestrated from the top of the sales chain. Mind if I hit the restroom real quick? Jason asked, standing up. Need a minute to think this over. Ethan nodded, relief washing over his face at the temporary reprieve. Jason used the opportunity to wander the showroom, observing other interactions under the guise of stretching his legs. Near the finance office, he overheard two employees chuckling over a recent sale. Dude was so hyped about the truck, he didn't even notice we added the elite protection plan. By the time he figures it out, the cooling off period's over. Their casual cruelty made Jason's stomach turn. In the customer lounge, he struck up small talk with a young farmer waiting to finalize a purchase. They told me this market adjustment fee is a new state law, the man grumbled. Didn't sound right, but what do I know? Nearby, an elderly couple beamed about a special discount they'd received, unaware it merely offset inflated fees buried in their contract. Every conversation revealed the same pattern: half-truths, misdirection, and deliberate confusion. Passing the dealership's wall of awards plaques for best customer service and community champion, Jason felt a bitter pang. He remembered the pride of earning each one, not knowing they'd become cruel ironies. Near the coffee station, he overheard Dan conducting what he called a strategy session with newer salespeople. "Remember, folks," Dan said, his voice slick with false charm, "customers don't know what they don't know. Our job is to guide them to the right choice, our choice." The group laughed, some eagerly, others with forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and Jason felt the weight of betrayal settle heavier on his shoulders. Returning to Ethan's desk, Jason pushed further. "That care package you mentioned, is it really necessary? Seems like a lot of extra cash." Ethan's response was telling. "Well, technically it's optional, but Dan reviews every contract. If someone declines it, suddenly their financing falls through or their trade-in value drops out of nowhere." As they spoke, Jason noticed recurring fees on the paperwork, market adjustments, mandatory bundles, premium plans, all with different names but the same purpose: squeezing every last dollar from unsuspecting buyers. The evidence was mounting. This wasn't a rogue employee. It was a systematic operation of deceit. Dan had weaponized incentives and fear, rewarding compliance with prime sales hours and punishing honesty with dead shifts or termination. Jason's mind raced as he compiled mental notes. Falsified finance applications, manipulated trade-in values, misrepresented warranties, and hidden fees slipped in at the last moment. Each discovery felt like a personal stab, a corruption of the values had instilled when he founded Carter's Wheels. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan slid a preliminary contract across the desk. "So, Mr. Tanner, ready to move forward?" Jason glanced at the document, noting how the initial $34,500 price had ballooned to $38,200 with mysterious charges. The same trap he'd seen spring on Robert Klein was now set for him. He had enough to act, but he needed one final piece: Dan's own admission of guilt to ensure the confrontation would be airtight. "Actually," Jason said, straightening slightly, "before I sign, I'd like to talk to Mr. Hargrove about these fees. Mind setting that up?" Ethan's face flickered with concern, but he nodded and headed to Dan's office. Through the glass walls, Jason watched their exchange, noting Dan's expression shift from irritation to predatory interest at the chance to rescue another sale. The stage was set for the most dangerous part of his investigation, a direct face-off with the architect of this corruption. Jason sat across from Dan Hargrove in the manager's office, the air thick with tension beneath the facade of polished professionalism. The dark wood paneling and leather chairs exuded authority, while framed photos of Dan with local business leaders lined the shelves, carefully curated props in a performance of trustworthiness. "Mr. Tanner," Dan began, his smile sharp and calculated, "Ethan tells me you've got concerns about our pricing structure. Let's clear things up." Jason maintained his disguise as Mike Tanner, leaning back with a mix of feigned uncertainty and curiosity. "Yeah, see, I couldn't help but notice what went down with that other customer earlier." Those fees came out of nowhere, and I'm wondering if I'm about to get hit with the same kind of surprise." He kept his tone rough but earnest, watching Dan's every move while ensuring the voice recorder in his shirt pocket was still running. Dan studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up its prey. Then he chuckled, a sound devoid of genuine warmth. "You're sharper than most, Mr. Tanner. I appreciate a man who pays attention to the details." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let me be straight with you. This business isn't just about selling trucks. It's about selling dreams. People walk in here thinking they're buying a vehicle, but what they're really after is status, power, the American dream on 4 wheels. Jason raised an eyebrow, encouraging Dan to continue while his anger simmered beneath the surface. "So, those fees ain't exactly standard?" he prompted, keeping his facade intact. Dan smirked, standing up to gaze out the window overlooking the lot. "Standard? No. Necessary? Absolutely. You see those folks out there? They don't know what they want until we tell them. They don't know what they can afford until we show them how to stretch their budgets with a little creative financing." He turned back, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Call it dishonest if you want, but it's just business. The owner, Carter, is too busy chasing expansion deals across the Midwest to care about our methods. As long as the numbers keep climbing, he stays out of our hair. And trust me, the numbers have never been better." Jason's fingers tightened on the armrest, but he forced himself to remain calm. "What about the customers who can't really swing those extra charges? Like that delivery guy earlier?" Dan's smirk widened as he settled back into his chair. "That's the beauty of it. By the time they realize what's happened, they're too emotionally invested to back out. Nobody wants to admit they've been played. Pride is a powerful thing, Mr. Tanner. Most would rather struggle with payments than face their families and say they got conned." He leaned back, adjusting his gold cufflinks with a casual arrogance. "And the owner? Carter's a fool, stuck in the past with his honest business nonsense. He doesn't have a clue. I've buried complaints so deep in paperwork, they'll never see daylight." Jason felt a cold clarity settle over him. This wasn't just greed. It was a deliberate, systematic betrayal of everything he'd built Carter's wheels to stand for. But he needed more direct admission of personal gain. "So this works? Nobody ever catches on?" Dan waved a hand dismissively. "I've perfected this system over 3 years. It's foolproof. The owner's too trusting, the customers are too desperate, and the staff, they're too afraid of losing their jobs to speak up. The ones who play along get prime hours and fat commissions. The ones who don't like that, Tim Guy, get shown the door." He pulled out a contract from his desk drawer, sliding it toward Jason. "Look, I can tell you're a smart man. So let me make you a deal. That mandatory care package, I can make it disappear for a little cash consideration, off the books. Think of it as an investment in understanding how things really work around here." Jason's pulse quickened. This was explicit admission of fraud, manipulation, and bribery, all captured on his recording. But he pushed one last time, ensuring the evidence was airtight. "And everyone's in on this? The whole staff?" Dan's arrogance was now on full display as he leaned closer, his voice a smug whisper. "The ones who matter are. The rest either fall in line or find themselves working elsewhere. It's survival of the fittest. Darwin would be proud. And between us, I've made more in kickbacks this year than Carter probably clears in legit profit." The old man's so focused on his big expansion plans, he doesn't even notice his flagship locations become a gold mine of hidden fees and padded charges. The pieces were in place. Jason had everything he needed to dismantle this web of corruption, but he knew the exposure had to be public, undeniable, and devastating enough to root out every trace of Dan's influence. Allowing himself a small, grim smile beneath his cap, he prepared for the final act. "Actually, Dan," he said, rising slowly from his chair, his voice dropping its affected tone and returning to its natural, authoritative resonance. "I think we need to discuss your employment status." He reached up, removing his baseball cap and standing to his full height. The transformation in Don's face was instantaneous. Confusion morphed into recognition, then pure, unbridled terror. The color drained from his features as if someone had pulled a plug. "Mr. Carter?" Dan stammered, stumbling backward and knocking over a stack of files on his desk. I can explain. Can you?" Jason's voice cut through the air like a blade. He pressed a button on his phone, and Dan's own words filled the office. "The owner's too trusting. The customers are too desperate. I've made more in kickbacks this year than Carter probably clears in legit profit." Dan's eyes widened in horror as his confession echoed off the walls. "All staff to the showroom floor immediately," Jason announced over the dealership's intercom system, his voice booming through the building. "Emergency meeting, no exceptions." Dan made a desperate lunge for his computer, likely hoping to delete incriminating files, but Jason stepped forward, blocking his path. "Touch that machine, and it'll add destruction of evidence to the list of charges." Within minutes, the showroom filled with confused employees, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the glass windows. Whispers rippled through the crowd as many who had never met Jason in person realized the man standing before them was the owner himself. "For those who don't know me," Jason began, his voice carrying a quiet intensity, "I'm Jason Carter, the founder of this dealership. Today I discovered something deeply disturbing about how our business has been operating." He played selected portions of his recorded conversations, including Dan's brazen admissions of fraud and manipulation. With each revelation, the atmosphere grew heavier. Some employees looked ashamed, others angry, and a few, those who had resisted Dan's corrupt system, showed visible relief. "Tom," Jason called out to the young salesman who had helped him earlier, "tell everyone what you told me about how sales hours are assigned." Tom stepped forward, his voice shaky but gaining strength. "Mr. Hargrove had a system. If we didn't push the extra fees and packages, we'd get stuck with dead shifts, no customers, no commissions. Some of us tried to push back, but we saw what happened to those who did. They got fired or sidelined." His honesty sparked murmurs of agreement from others who had felt the same pressure. "Furthermore," Jason continued, "I've spent the day documenting numerous violations, not just of our company policies, but of state and federal laws." He turned to Dan, who stood pale and rigid near his office door. "Would you like to explain how you've been burying customer complaints, or shall we discuss the kickbacks you've been pocketing?" Dan's professional mask shattered. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine," he spat, his voice trembling with desperation. "Actually," Jason held up his phone, "I have hours of recordings, including your detailed confessions of scamming customers and rigging contracts, not to mention the digital trail of altered documents. I'm sure our IT department will uncover." He addressed the staff again. Implementing an immediate freeze on all pending sales. Every contract from the past 6 months will be reviewed. If you've participated in these schemes, you have one chance. Come forward now, provide full documentation of your involvement, and well discuss your future with the company. Try to hide anything, and you'll be terminated without reference and potentially face legal charges. The silence was deafening. Then, one by one, employees began stepping forward, some to confess, others to report incidents they'd witnessed. "As for you, Dan," Jason turned back to his former manager, who was now inching toward the exit. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear out your personal belongings. Don't bother deleting anything from your computer. Our IT team is already creating backups of all files." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared flanking Dan, his face contorted with rage. "You're making a mistake, Carter. This business will tank without me. Those profit margins you love, they'll disappear. I'd rather earn an honest dollar than steal 100. Jason replied calmly. Security. Ensure Mr. Hargrove doesn't take anything that doesn't belong to him, especially customer files or contracts. As Dan was led away, Jason faced the remaining staff. Starting tomorrow, we begin fixing this mess. Every customer who was overcharged will be contacted and compensated. Every fraudulent fee will be refunded. Every dishonest practice ends now. The tension in the showroom began to dissipate as Dan was escorted out, replaced by a cautious sense of relief among the staff. Jason's gaze softened as he continued addressing his team. Some of you tried to resist this corruption. You were punished for it. It relegated to poor hours, denied opportunities. That ends now. Integrity will be rewarded here, not penalized. A slow clap interrupted the moment. Everyone turned to see Robert Klein standing at the showroom entrance, having returned to make one final plea for his deposit. His weary face showed a flicker of hope as he took in the scene. Mr. Klein, Jason walked over, extending a hand. I believe we need to review your contract. You'll be getting your truck at the price you were originally quoted, with a full refund of any extra fees charged. And on behalf of Carter's Wheels, I offer you a sincere apology. We failed you, and we're going to make it right. Robert's eyes welled with tears, his voice barely a whisper. My kids, their future, thank you. Jason nodded. Your family will be taken care of. I'd also like to ensure your oldest high school expenses are supported. We'll set up a small fund to help with supplies and fees. As the reality of the situation sank in, the atmosphere shifted further. Hope replaced resignation. Relief replaced fear. Tomorrow, Jason announced, we start rebuilding this dealership's reputation. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But we will restore the trust we've lost one customer at a time. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the showroom floor, Jason stood among his employees, ready to begin the hard work of redemption. In the weeks that followed, Carter's Wheels underwent a dramatic transformation. Jason implemented sweeping changes to restore integrity, starting with a transparency task force. Large digital displays were installed throughout the showroom, showing real-time pricing with every fee and add-on clearly explained, no hidden charges, no last-minute surprises. A new motto was displayed prominently above the entrance. Clarity, honesty, trust. One morning, as Jason reviewed customer files at his desk, now moved to the showroom floor for direct oversight. Tom approached nervously. Mr. Carter, there's something you should see. He handed over a thick folder. I've been keeping records of all the questionable deals Dan pushed through. Dates, amounts, customer info, everything. Jason flipped through the documents, his respect for Tom growing. You took a big risk documenting this. Tom straightened his shoulders. I couldn't stop it, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least keep track. My dad always said doing the right thing matters, even when nobody's watching. Your dad was a wise man, Jason smiled. How would you feel about heading up our new customer advocacy department? The transformation extended beyond policy. Jason personally called every overcharged customer, acknowledging the wrongdoing and committing to restitution. The dealership's conference room became a hub of reconciliation, where customers could review contracts and receive refunds for fraudulent fees. Many were moved to tears, realizing their confusion during purchases had been deliberately engineered. One Saturday, a familiar face returned Tim, the salesman fired for refusing Dan's schemes. Jason had tracked him down, offering not just his job back, but a promotion to sales trainer, tasked with teaching ethical practices. The key, Tim explained to new hires, is building relationships based on trust. When a customer leaves, they should feel confident, not confused. The dealership's reputation began to shift. Local news picked up the story of the undercover boss, who exposed corruption in his own business, but the real buzz came from the aftermath. How Carter's Wheels became a model of ethical practice. Robert Klein's story symbolized this redemption. Not only did he get his truck at the promised price, But Jason created a scholarship in his daughter's name for children of customers pursuing education. "It's not just about selling trucks anymore," Jason told a local reporter. "It's about being part of the community, showing that success and integrity aren't mutually exclusive." Profits initially dipped as honest pricing took hold, but customer satisfaction soared. Word of mouth brought in buyers tired of games at other dealerships, appreciating the straightforward approach: no haggling, just fair deals and exceptional service. 6 months later, Carter's Wheels hosted a community appreciation day. The lot buzzed with families enjoying free food, music, and activities. Children played in bounce houses while parents browsed vehicles without pressure. During the event, Jason watched Tom guide an elderly couple through a purchase, explaining every cost clearly. Their faces showed excitement, not anxiety, a stark contrast to Dan's era. As the sun set on the successful day, Robert Klein approached Jason with a warm smile. "What you did here, Mr. Carter, it's bigger than trucks. You showed people integrity still matters in business." Jason nodded, watching the last customers leave with smiles. "Sometimes you have to tear everything down to rebuild it right. But it's worth it when families get what they were promised, no surprises, no regrets." As the dealership's lights flickered on, illuminating rows of trucks under the evening sky, Jason stood in the same spot where he'd parked his beat-up Honda months ago. The lot looked different now, not just with transparent pricing displays and a customer-friendly layout, but in its essence. Inside his office, he placed a framed photo of his father's old truck next to a new sign for employees: "Trust is earned, one honest deal at a time." Reflecting on this journey, Jason felt a deep satisfaction. Carter's Wheels wasn't just selling vehicles, it was setting a standard for ethical business. The road ahead would have challenges, but with a foundation of honesty, they were ready to face them. Sometimes the best way to lead is by example, even if it means going undercover to uncover the truth. This story isn't just about a dealership, it's a reminder of a universal truth. In a world where shortcuts and deceit often seem like the fastest path to success, integrity remains the only sustainable foundation. Think about the businesses you trust, whether it's a local shop or a global brand. How often have you felt betrayed by hidden fees or broken promises? Jason Carter's story shows us that real success isn't measured in profit margins, but in the trust you build with every interaction. Consider a real-world parallel. In 2015, a major car manufacturer was caught falsifying emissions data, costing billions in fines and irreparable damage to their reputation. Customers felt betrayed and sales plummeted. Contrast that with companies like Patagonia, which built a loyal base by prioritizing transparency and ethical practices over short-term gains. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild, but once earned, it's an unbreakable bond. So what can we learn from Jason's journey? First, never underestimate the power of walking in someone else's shoes. By seeing his business through a customer's eyes, Jason uncovered truths he'd never have found from behind a desk. Second, corruption often hides in plain sight, masked by charm and authority. It takes courage to confront it, especially when it's in your own house. Finally, redemption is possible, but it requires action, not just words making amends, rebuilding systems, and prioritizing people over profit. As you go about your day, ask yourself, are you building trust in your own life, whether in business, relationships, or personal goals? If Jason Carter can risk everything to save his dream, what small step can you take to uphold integrity in your world? Let us know in the comments, what's one experience where honesty made a difference for you? If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more tales of real-life heroes. Until next time, remember, trust isn't just a promise, it's a legacy worth fighting for.